Seeing this 25-minute presentation and then going on to watch and read the impressions of journalists who actually got to play the game, I already don't know what to discuss first. There's so much info that our faces just got blasted with, it's actually insane. I imagine when the game comes out, I'll be jerking off to it for a month before I'm actually able to gather my thoughts and upload a video. There's so much to unpack here that I'll definitely have to do a separate video analyzing the gameplay, maybe one summarizing the journalist impressions, and possibly even a video on the newly announced Cyberpunk anime. This video is just my initial thoughts on what we were shown and how I now feel about the game. I may have given it away in the title, but holy fuck. This was worth the wait, the delay, and all the hype I was building up for it. Let me address something first. I've seen a lot of people express a certain degree of disappointment when the event ended. We only got to see a gameplay trailer with quick cuts and a larger segment involving brain dance that a lot of people didn't find very engaging. But number one, CDPR is just starting to roll out the marketing for this game. There's still 5 months until release, and given how huge the game is, it makes sense to space the info out leading up to the release. This was only the first episode of Night City Wire, and the next one was confirmed to take place in a few weeks. If we get one episode per month, I feel like that would be exactly the right amount of content to keep us happy. I mean, people were excited to dissect the 4-second clip of the car spinning. I'm pretty sure there's enough detail in this episode to analyze for the next month. Also, there's already a simp subreddit for best girl cyber waifu Judy, and it hasn't even been a few hours since the event at the time of writing this. Also, number two, the gameplay we saw at the event wasn't everything that was revealed on the day of Night City Wire. A good amount of journalists got to play the game over the past week or so for 3 to 5 hours, and even though they weren't allowed to record their own gameplay, they did get some footage pre-recorded by CDPR to use as B-roll in their impressions videos. When you also take that new gameplay into consideration, if you're still disappointed, then you're just a bummer of a human being. For some reason, it's incredibly hard to find a clear, unedited version of the footage without Jeff Keighley fucking waffling on about something in the background.
So one of the things that I was really excited about is that I got to drive in this game and see the world.
No offense, Jeff, you're a legend, but you need to work on your audio leveling. I'll do my best to find all of the clips to use in my gameplay analysis video, so subscribe so you don't miss that. The main takeaway from this event is Johnny Silverhand doesn't look like this anymore. That's all I have to say. Goodbye and thanks for watching. Everything we were shown was from the game's prologue. Stop and think about that for a second. All of these different people, all with their own backgrounds, stories, and reasons for existing. All with their different styles, features, and ethnicities. Also this guy. Just this guy. Not only people, these unique locations, activities, and interactions. That's all taken from the prologue. One moment Jackie's in a suit infiltrating a giant corporate Arasaka building looking like Agent 47, which is probably the stealth approach to stealing the biochip for Dexter Deshawn, and in the next moment you're guns blazing causing a bloodbath in a nightclub. Night City Wire gave me the impression that this game is packed full of content, possibly even more than what I previously thought. The sheer variety and scope of what we've seen is one of the things that I feel like could make this a generation-defining game. We've never seen any game come close to the level of content that Cyberpunk looks to have, more and more so each time we see it. This is the reason why I absolutely loved the presentation, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people overlook when they expect to see just non-stop action and sandboxy fucking around in these showcases. I understand that though, this is something that can never really be shown in a gameplay demo. I fell in love with the implications. Just every moment that we saw felt like it belonged to a bigger picture. Getting to know the characters, exploring the city, and going through an emotional journey is a long process, and especially in a game that promises so much variety, it's a personal process, unique to your playstyle. Even the journalists who got to play the game say that they felt like they barely scratched the surface in the few hours that they were given to play. A couple of things that are immediately apparent though are the graphics and the world. Both are goddamn jaw-dropping. The graphics are better than in the previous demos. The lighting is phenomenal and incredibly atmospheric. Even on the technology side, Digital Foundry did a video reacting to the new gameplay and they're impressed. I recommend checking that out for a detailed breakdown of the graphics by people who actually know what they're talking about. There's still a big question of will this thing be able to run on the original consoles and average PC hardware, and my assumption is that it probably won't look this good. The game also utilizes some very demanding technology like ray tracing, and turning the settings down to be able to run this on a GTX 1060 card, for example, which is the card that I have, will probably take some away from the eye candy that we were shown. All I can say is that the vibe, not necessarily the graphics, but the atmosphere, is something that is probably among the top 3 things I look for in games, and Cyberpunk at night fucking delivers. The journalists got to explore the world a lot more than what we were shown, and it's pretty much a unanimous take that the world of Cyberpunk is probably the most detailed that we've seen so far in games, period. Many of them have mentioned how you only get this sort of detail from a linear game of a much smaller scope, like The Last of Us 2, but Cyberpunk takes that meticulous world building and expands it to a giant open world. We got to see a lot of snippets from different areas and all of them look gorgeous. Just imagine how many hours you can spend exploring random alleyways and places somebody else might never even see in their playthrough. I know some people had concerns about the world being small, but I always thought that was a stupid thing to be worried about. Density is always mentioned as a counter to that point, but I think people still overlook density in games. Look at this view. This is not even all of the districts. Even horizontally it looks huge, but just imagine the number of buildings you can enter and how many of them probably have unique interiors. If you compare that to something like GTA 5, the world of GTA is probably much bigger, but it's empty and becomes boring to explore after a while. Let's get into the gunplay and driving. First things first, the revolver V is using to blast Arasaka guys while Jackie is driving. It looks and sounds so meaty and satisfying. That was definitely a hold up moment for me. I was very impressed with the weight of the pistol, especially compared to the gunplay from 2018. The rifle we got to see later also sounded amazing, but the recoil was pretty minimal. Now you gotta remember that this is an RPG game and not a first-person shooter. The gunplay changes as you use your weapons. You get better at controlling recoil, the animations change, you get faster at reloading, etc. There also seems to be a lot of different weapons based on some journalist accounts. Alana Pierce, for example, said that there was a lot of stuff in the gun shop in V's building that she was interested in trying out, but she didn't have enough street cred to buy. The only thing that felt a bit slow and unnatural for me was the Mantis Blade decapitation. Since the first time we saw Mantis Blades in action, they seemed kinda slow to me, but that's pretty much all I can say about that at this point in time. When it comes to driving, I'm happy with what we saw. Skill Up said that the driving felt amazing, while Parris wasn't that impressed. All in all, I don't really care too much about the driving mechanics as long as they're not horrible. GTA 5 had average driving, but that was more than enough for me. For me, the point of driving, other than transportation of course, is to explore the city and absorb the atmosphere, and as long as the mechanics don't make that difficult, I'm happy. There's also supposedly a lot of radio stations in cars, and I've seen people say you can expect a GTA 5 level radio. The driving is a thing that they mentioned that they're still tweaking, so I expect it to be a bit different by launch. What makes an RPG game like this a 10 out of 10 game for me is not a collection of mechanics that are all 10 out of 10. The Witcher 3 is my favorite game and the best RPG I've ever played, yet it's far from perfect in every aspect. The combat was clunky, the movement felt weird, the loot was often useless, and the AI wasn't perfect. But what I feel makes an RPG amazing is variety. It's how many things you can do. It's the freedom you feel to do whatever you please. It's a highly detailed world to get lost in, and it's amazing characters and story. For Cyberpunk to be a genre-defining game, it doesn't need to do everything right, and it likely won't. It just needs to do some things amazing and other things good enough. We're still a few decades off from a game combining the world detail of Red Dead Redemption 2, gunplay of Doom, characters of The Last of Us, driving of Forza Horizon, and the freedom of Skyrim. A lot of people in Cyberpunk's community like to remind others to keep their expectations in check, which is fine, and I get it, but after seeing this latest showcase, that philosophy is out the fucking window for me. My hype is now running loose and I can no longer contain it. I think Cyberpunk will be the crowning achievement of current gen and the perfect game to end the generation with, and we don't know what next gen will bring, but Cyberpunk will hopefully set the standard for games to come. Your likes and comments really help my tiny channel, and I'd love to read what you guys thought of Night City Wire. Also, I now declare Judy my official waifu and queen of the No Cap family, so bow down to your queen, peasants.